Welcome to our video on how medieval soldiers ate to survive the hardest battles. Have you ever wondered what fueled these warriors as they faced grueling campaigns and intense combat? Join us as we explore the diets of medieval soldiers, revealing the foods they relied on, the challenges of feeding armies on the move, and the strategies used to keep them nourished under extreme conditions. From hardtack and salted meat to foraging and innovative cooking techniques, we'll uncover how these meals supported their survival and endurance. Get ready to step into the gritty reality of life on the medieval battlefield. Basic diet of medieval soldiers. The daily diet of medieval soldiers was shaped by necessity, availability, and practicality. Soldiers required sustenance that was not only nutritious but also portable and preserved for extended periods due to the nature of their campaigns. Food shortages, logistical challenges, and need for non-perishable supplies often defined the meals consumed by troops during medieval times. Their basic diet, though modest, reflected these constraints and provided just enough energy to endure grueling battles. One of the most common staples for a medieval soldier was porridge. This simple dish, made by cooking oats, barley, or wheat in water or milk, served as a crucial source of carbohydrates. Porridge was affordable and easy to prepare even in the most basic of field conditions, making it a dependable part of a soldier's diet. Though it was often bland, soldiers occasionally found ways to enhance its flavor by adding herbs, honey, or other locally available ingredients. It also had the advantage of being highly filling, which kept soldiers satiated for longer periods during marches or combat. Nonetheless, the repetitive consumption of this dish underscored the struggles of food monotony faced by many medieval soldiers. When available, meat was a highly valued addition to a soldier's diet. However, it was often considered a luxury, particularly for common foot soldiers. To prevent spoilage during long campaigns, meat was typically salted or smoked, which also added flavor to otherwise plain meals. Soldiers consumed various types of meat depending on what was regionally abundant. Pork and beef were the most commonly enjoyed options, though in some desperate situations, soldiers resorted to eating horse meat. While meat provided essential proteins and fats necessary for physical endurance and muscle repair, the inconsistent supply often meant that soldiers could not rely on it as a daily staple. Fresh meat was especially scarce and usually reserved for higher-ranking commanders or during moments of bounty. For soldiers stationed in or traveling near coastal regions, dried fish served as a significant protein source. Fish such as herring or cod were preserved through salting or drying, making them ideal for transportation. Dried fish could last for long stretches without refrigeration, ensuring that soldiers had a reliable and portable food source. While it provided nutrients similar to those found in meat, the taste of salted fish was often a divisive matter, as the heavy salting required for preservation could make the dish excessively briny. Despite its drawbacks, dried fish highlighted the resourcefulness of medieval armies in securing alternative foods to keep soldiers nourished. Now, another essential component of the medieval soldier's diet was beer. Surprisingly, beer was consumed far more frequently than water. This was largely due to water contamination, which posed significant health risks, particularly during campaigns. Beer, being boiled during its preparation, offered a safer and more reliable source of hydration for soldiers. It also provided light calorie intake, making it a valuable source of energy in the absence of sufficient food. Unlike the strong beers enjoyed in modern times, medieval beer was typically weaker in alcohol content, allowing soldiers to consume it in larger quantities without impairing their battle readiness. Drinking beer not only kept soldiers hydrated, but also provided some minimal nutritional value, making it an indispensable supplement to their diet. Overall, the basic diet of medieval soldiers reflected a balance between practicality and survival. Food supplies were often dictated by the harsh realities of war, including unpredictable weather, hostile territories, and logistical hurdles. Though insufficient by modern standards, the simplicity of their diet was aligned with the resources and knowledge available at the time. By relying on staples like porridge for energy, intermittent meat or fish for protein, and beer for hydration, medieval soldiers managed to sustain themselves through the toughest of battles. Nevertheless, the physical and nutritional hardships they endured underscore how challenging it was to maintain strength and stamina in an era rife with uncertainty. 2. Challenges of feeding armies on campaigns. Providing sustenance to large medieval armies on the move presented unparalleled challenges that could make or break military campaigns. Feeding an army in the medieval period wasn't just a matter of logistics, but a life or math struggle that involved careful planning, improvisation, and often severe compromise. The circumstances in which soldiers had to nourish themselves reveal a harsh reality of war, when hunger could become as imposing an enemy as any armed force. The biggest challenges was the lack of proper supply chains. Unlike modern armies, medieval forces did not have systematic ways to transport large quantities of food over extended distances. Soldiers relied on supply points established en route, but these were often few and far between. Armies had to factor in the conditions of the land they marched through, and this lack of guaranteed access to provisions added tremendous uncertainty. If an area had already been raided or was naturally infertile, soldiers faced the constant risk of deprivation. Starvation became an expected part of a prolonged campaign, and leaders had to make tough decisions about how best to keep their troops sustained. Another serious challenge was how food was preserved to last through lengthy campaigns. The medieval world lacked refrigeration or advanced preservation techniques, so armies relied on methods such as salting, smoking, and drying to maintain their supplies. Salted meats or dried fish were common staples, as these could endure longer periods without spoiling. However, the quality of these preserved foods often left much to be desired, and improper storage could easily render them unusable. Additionally, grains were carried in sealed sacks to stave off pest and moisture. Although such measures were never foolproof, mold, insects, or accidents en route could wipe out entire supplies, leaving troops scrambling for alternatives. The third issue was transportation itself. Armies, particularly larger ones, faced logistical nightmares when it came to moving food supplies alongside soldiers, weapons, and other essential materials. Horses, oxen, and carts helped alleviate the burden, but these modes of transport had limits. Roads were often unpaved and hazardous, slowing progress and risking the loss of supplies in transit. During harsh weather or lengthy campaigns, transport animals could succumb to fatigue, hunger, or disease, compounding the strain on the army's resources. Soldiers would sometimes have to eat the very animals they relied on for logistics, further impacting their ability to transport other supplies. When supply lines failed or ran too thin, armies turned to foraging and pillaging as their primary means of survival. While this might sustain a force temporarily, it came at a heavy cost both morally and strategically. Local populations suffered immensely as soldiers stripped villages of their crops and livestock, and resentment among the populace could lead to uprisings or guerrilla attacks. Additionally, if lands had already been devastated by previous campaigns, there was often little left to take. Soldiers were then left to scavenge whatever meager resources they could find, consuming roots, wild herbs, or small game found along the way. These substitutes provided limited nutrition, weakening the army over time and leaving them vulnerable to disease and defeat. Grueling conditions of medieval warfare also demanded extreme measures in the most desperate of circumstances. Prolonged sieges, in which armies remained stationed around fortified enemy locations for months or even years, were especially brutal in terms of food shortages. When traditional food sources were exhausted, soldiers resorted to desperate acts to survive. Boiling leather from their own gear for sustenance, though hardly nourishing, was not uncommon, and stories of consuming insects or finding sustenance from the bare land are well documented. Some of the darkest moments of medieval campaigns involved cannibalism, a horrifying testament to the toll starvation could take on even the most disciplined armies. Adding to these difficulties, diseases caused by malnutrition or spoiled food frequently swept through armies, killing more men than actual combat in many cases. Consuming rotten or contaminated food resulted in outbreaks of dysentery, typhoid, and other illnesses that ravaged soldiers' health. Armies were also weakened by the sheer monotony of their diets as malnutrition set in due to the lack of vitamins and minerals. For campaigns that pushed soldiers to the brink of their physical and emotional endurance, poor nutrition often turned manageable challenges into insurmountable ones. The challenges of feeding medieval armies did not go unnoticed by commanders who were required to strategize not only for battles but also for survival. Forward-thinking leaders organized supply chains as best they could, setting aside stockpiles at strategic points and negotiating with allied regions for additional resources. But even the best planning couldn't fully account for the unpredictability of warfare. A poor harvest, an unforeseen delay, or an enemy raiding their supply trains could quickly turn the tide against an otherwise well-prepared army. 3. Nice diet of common soldiers. The diet of medieval knights significantly differed from that of common soldiers, highlighting the stark contrast in privilege and status during this period. Knights, being members of the noble class, had access to a far more diverse and nutritious diet compared to the foot soldiers. Their meals were rich in ingredients that were often unattainable for the lower ranks, lending knights a considerable advantage in physical endurance and overall health. The knights benefited greatly from their privileges, including access to fresh meat, live animals, and the opportunity to hunt on lands reserved exclusively for the nobility. The meat-heavy diet contributed to their strength and muscle maintenance, which were crucial for wearing armor and wielding heavy weapons in battle. Beyond meat, knights also consumed dairy products such as aged cheeses and fermented milk, which supplemented their nutrition with calcium and proteins. These food sources ensured that knights maintained robust bone health and energy levels during prolonged campaigns. Another notable luxury in a knight's diet was the use of spices, such as black pepper, ginger, and cinnamon. For knights, spices were more than just flavor enhancers. They were also believed to provide medicinal benefits, such as aiding in digestion or warding off illness. The ability to afford such costly ingredients was a testament to their social standing, and it distinguished their meals from the simpler, more monotonous diets of common soldiers who rarely enjoyed such luxuries. Beverages also set knights apart. While water was often unsafe to drink and beer was the staple beverage among common soldiers, knights were accustomed to consuming wine. However, their wine was enhanced with a mixture of herbs believed to have relaxing and energizing properties. This practice offered knights both physical and psychological relief after the rigors of battle or training, as well as improved stamina for their demanding lifestyle. The common soldier's diet, in contrast, was much more frugal and basic. These foot soldiers primarily survived on bread, porridge, and legumes, supplemented by any foraged goods when possible. Meat was a rarity for them, often limited to small portions when distributed or scavenged on the battlefield. Their meals lacked the diversity and caloric density required for sustained physical strength, which made it challenging for them to endure the same trials knights faced. Even their alcoholic beverages, typically low-quality ale, lacked the revitalizing qualities of the herbed wines consumed by knights. Ultimately, the dietary differences between knights and common soldiers significantly impacted their performance on the battlefield. Knights' richer and more nutrient-dense meals ensured they had superior physical endurance and recovery ability. Meanwhile, common soldiers often struggled to match this strength and stamina, as their diets barely met the minimum nutritional needs for survival. This dietary disparity not only underscored the social hierarchy within medieval armies, but also influenced the effectiveness of individuals during combat, with knights clearly enjoying both physical and status-driven advantages. But medieval warfare was grueling, and access to quality food was central to a soldier's ability to fight and survive. The knight's diet, replete with meat, dairy, spices, and fortified beverages, reflected a life of privilege far removed from the austere and limited sustenance of common soldiers. This divide in nourishment mirrored the broader societal structure, where class and resources dictated much of one's existence, even in the harsh realities of war. 4. Battlefield food. The life of a medieval soldier was grueling, and food played an essential role in providing both sustenance and endurance during prolonged campaigns. Battlefield food was dictated by the need for portability, preservation, and efficiency, as soldiers were often on the move and lacked the luxuries of a settled kitchen or reliable food sources. Quick and portable foods were critical to medieval soldiers, as they needed nourishment that could withstand the harsh conditions of war and long marches. Hard bread, often referred to as travel biscuits, was a staple due to its durability and ability to last for extended periods without spoiling. Similarly, dried meat was a common provision. It was lightweight, easy to carry, and packed with protein to sustain energy during physically demanding tasks. The soldiers also relied on campaign soup, which was a more versatile and comforting meal option when time and resources allowed. This broth was often prepared during pauses on the battlefield, combining grains, dried meat, and herbs to create a nourishing and warm dish. Such meals not only delivered vital calories, but also boosted soldiers' morale during arduous campaigns. To supplement their food supply, soldiers foraged local resources whenever possible, adding whatever edible plants or ingredients they could find to their limited provisions. However, this was not always feasible, especially when engaged in relentless battles or during sieges, where resources in the surrounding areas were often depleted. The challenges of keeping soldiers hydrated were just as daunting. Drinks, such as water, were often avoided unless boiled due to widespread contamination and the risk of disease. Weak beer became a popular alternative because it was safer to drink, acted as a source of hydration, and provided a slight caloric boost. The presence of alcohol, although mild, also served as a disinfectant for harmful bacteria, making it a reliable choice on the battlefield. For soldiers stationed in regions where wine was abundant, it was sometimes mixed with herbs to create a concoction believed to enhance stamina and provide additional nutrients. Medieval battlefield food was not about enjoyment, it was about survival. Soldiers consumed what was available and practical, often stretching small rations over long periods. These simple yet effective dietary strategies ensured that armies could endure some of the most grueling conditions and carry on with their campaigns. It was a testament to their resourcefulness and resilience, underscoring the critical link between sustenance and survival in the harsh realities of medieval warfare. 5. Extreme survival methods. Medieval soldiers often faced dire circumstances when on prolonged campaigns where food supplies could dwindle to catastrophic levels. The art of survival in such harsh conditions relied on creativity and resilience, albeit at times with grim consequences. Relying on scarce resources in unfamiliar territories, soldiers employed extreme measures to sustain themselves. One common strategy involved foraging for any edible plants, roots, and berries found in their immediate surroundings. However, this method was fraught with danger, as not all plant life was safe for consumption. Without advanced knowledge of toxic plants or guidance, soldiers risk accidental poisoning in their desperation to stave off starvation. Mushrooms and unfamiliar roots were particularly treacherous, as many could be harmful or even fatal if ingested. Nevertheless, for some, the gamble was worth the chance of survival. When plant-based foraging proved insufficient, soldiers turned to unconventional protein sources. Hunting small animals such as rabbits or birds became a necessity, but even this strategy was unreliable in times of scarcity or amidst the chaos of war. Some troops were forced to consume vermin such as rats and mice, creatures commonly found in war-torn camps. While unappetizing, such crude diets provided essential calories to fuel their weakened bodies. The desperation to survive could lead to even more extreme and macabre measures. Boiling leather from armor, belts, or sandals into a makeshift broth was one such method, born of pure survival instinct rather than nutritional value. Documented cases also indicate that horseless cavalry or decimated armies would slaughter and consume their own horses, trusted and indispensable war companions, when no other food could be found. This practice, though heartbreaking for many, provided valuable meat and sustenance. Perhaps most shocking were tales of cannibalism during severe military sieges or extended campaigns in remote areas. Historical accounts suggest that when starvation eliminated all other options, soldiers sometimes resorted to consuming the flesh of deceased comrades or captives. Such actions were born out of desperation rather than malice, underscoring the severity of food shortages in medieval warfare. These grim accounts demonstrate the sheer lengths soldiers would go to in order to survive under unimaginable conditions. Survival during these brutal times demanded quick thinking, resourcefulness, and often the willingness to overcome emotional and moral boundaries. The extreme survival methods used by medieval soldiers reveal a bleak reality of warfare and the immense human toll exacted by prolonged conflict. 6. Angst. Role of beer and mead. Alcoholic beverages like beer and mead played a surprisingly important role in the survival and morale of medieval soldiers. While modern nutritionists might not consider them essential, these beverages provided many practical benefits that were deeply valued on the battlefield, including hydration, sustenance, and even psychological comfort. Beer, in particular, was an everyday staple for soldiers due to its availability and dual purpose as both a hydrator and a source of calories. Unlike untreated water, which harbored dangerous bacteria and lead to potentially fatal diseases, beer was safer to consume because the brewing process involved boiling and fermentation. Thus, beer provided hydration without the common risks associated with contaminated water supplies. Additionally, it was rich in carbohydrates and contained trace amounts of nutrients, offering both energy and sustenance, particularly on long marches or during extended sieges. Soldiers often drank low-alcohol beer throughout the day to stave off dehydration and maintain their energy levels while enduring strenuous tasks on the front lines. Mead, made from fermented honey, water, and sometimes fruits or spices, carried more symbolic and ritualistic value. Unlike beer, it was often reserved for elite warriors, knights, and leaders, marking it as a drink of prestige. Mead was believed to have strengthening properties, credited with boosting both physical vigor and mental sharpness. Folklore frequently associated with bravery and honor on the battlefield, and its role in morale boosting among troops cannot be understated. For many warriors, the chance to indulge in mead was a rare privilege, offering not only physical replenishment but also a taste of glory and camaraderie. Wine also made its way in the military diets, particularly among soldiers from regions such as southern Europe. While less common than beer or mead among ordinary foot soldiers, wine was often mixed with herbs, spices, or even diluted with water to create warm, invigorating beverages that helped ward off the chill of winter campaigns. Some believe these herbal concoctions had medicinal benefits, aiding in recovery from wounds or strengthening the immune system against illness. But wine, like mead, also played a role in boosting morale and was often enjoyed during celebrations following victories. Alcohol in a medieval battlefield context served more than just physical sustenance. It brought soldiers together. Sharing a mug of beer or mead helped foster camaraderie and solidarity in the face of the immense hardships of war. Whether sipping from a simple wooden cup or drinking toast from decorative goblets on the eve of battle, these rituals created bonds and upheld morale during grueling campaigns. 7. Medicinal plants and spices. During medieval times, soldiers relied heavily on the natural environment to maintain their strength and recover from the injuries and illnesses brought on by grueling battles. Medicinal plants and spices served dual purposes for nourishment and healing, even when medical knowledge was limited compared to modern standards. Herbal remedies, passed down through generations, were central to their survival strategies. A variety of medicinal plants were utilized to tackle digestive problems, which were common due to inconsistent food quality. Chamomile, for instance, was brewed into tea to alleviate stomach aches and improve gastrointestinal health. Yarrow, with its antibacterial properties, was used to treat wounds, stop bleeding, and prevent infections on the battlefield. Soldiers carried dried calendula flowers to prepare poultices, which could help speed the healing process for cuts and burns. Spices also played an important role, not only to make bland or preserved food more palatable, but also for their health benefits. Black pepper, a staple spice, was used for its warming properties and to aid digestion. Ginger, often dried and carried by soldiers in small amounts, provided relief from nausea and other stomach issues. Sage, considered both a culinary herb and a medicinal agent, was believed to enhance energy and improve mental clarity, which could prove essential during periods of intense physical and emotional strain. These medicinal plants and spices might not have been available in abundance, but their strategic use during travel or battle was critical. From soothing stomach ailments to acting as antiseptics, what may seem simple today offered significant survival advantages in the harsh realities of medieval warfare. 8th, food preservation techniques. With long campaigns and uncertain access to fresh supplies, medieval soldiers depended on effective food preservation techniques to ensure their sustenance. These methods allowed them to store food for weeks or even months, providing a lifeline in an otherwise precarious existence. Salting and smoking were two primary techniques used for preserving meat, which was a valuable source of protein. Meat, often pork or fish, was salted with large quantities of rock salt to draw out moisture and inhibit bacterial growth. This process created a heavily salted product that could last for extended periods without refrigeration. Similarly, smoking meat was another reliable method. Smoked over low heat using firewood, the meat developed a drier texture and distinct flavor that further extended its shelf life. Grain preservation was equally vital, as grain served as the foundation for bread, porridge, and other staples. Grains like barley, oats, and wheat were stored in sealed sacks made from sturdy materials to protect them from pests and moisture. Bread baked during these times often came in the form of hardtack, a dry and durable product made from flour, water, and little else. Hardtack was nearly indestructible and could be consumed long after it was made, albeit often soaked in water or stew to make it more palatable. Beyond grains and meat, long-standing produce like cheese and dried fruits also played an essential role in survival. Cheese was aged and hardened, ensuring it could be taken on long journeys without spoiling. Portable and calorie-dense, it became a reliable food item on the battlefield. Dried fruits, particularly figs and raisins, provided a rare sweetness along with essential vitamins to fend off deficiencies when fresh produce wasn't available. These food preservation methods not only helped soldiers survive the long stretches of medieval campaigns, but also demonstrated the ingenuity with which societies adapted to the challenges of their time. Whether through salted meat, sealed grains, or dried fruit, these techniques ensured that nourishment was possible even in the harshest of conditions. Combined with their knowledge of medicinal plants and spices, medieval soldiers developed a practical and resourceful approach to meeting their dietary needs amidst the chaos of war. 9. The secret medieval food. Medieval soldiers faced unimaginable hardships during battles, often enduring long campaigns with scarce supplies. These circumstances necessitated the creation of robust, nutritious, and long-standing food provisions. Among the key secret foods of the era were pemmican and hardtack. Pemmican, originally inspired by indigenous practices, was a life-saving mixture of dried meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried fruit. Its high caloric content and incredible shelf life made it an indispensable resource for soldiers on the move or during extended sieges. The mixture's compact size also allowed large quantities to be easily transported, ensuring that soldiers always had an energy-rich option available when fresh food was not accessible. Another staple of medieval rations was hardtack, a nearly indestructible bread made simply from flour and water. This dense, dry biscuit could survive decades when stored properly, rendering it an ideal food for long campaigns. Though hard and sometimes unpalatable without soaking it in water or soup, hardtack provided the vital carbohydrates needed to fuel the physical demands of combat. These simple yet effective foods reveal how resourceful medieval soldiers had to be in preparing for the challenges of conflict, especially when supply lines were unreliable or non-existent. Salted meat, cheese, and dried legumes were additional staples that complemented the primary rations. Preservation techniques ensured that soldiers had access to protein and essential nutrients despite prolonged storage. Salted meat, for instance, prevented spoilage and was relatively easy to transport. Cheese, when properly aged, became a portable and durable source of calories, adding variety to the soldiers' diets. These foods represented not only sustenance but also survival, ensuring that soldiers could endure grueling campaigns far from home with enough strength to persevere through battle. 10. Lessons from medieval nutrition. The lessons gleaned from medieval military nutrition remain highly relevant today. The strategies employed by soldiers in that era highlight the importance of resourcefulness and innovation in ensuring survival under the most challenging conditions. By leveraging preservation techniques like drying, salting, and rendering, medieval societies maximized the longevity of their food supplies, reducing waste and ensuring their armies remained nourished for extended periods. These preservation methods were born out of necessity but carried significant implications for modern food preservation practices. For instance, the use of drying and adding fat in pemmican provided a blueprint for contemporary energy-dense survival foods often used during exploration or by armed forces today. Similarly, the simplicity of hardtack reflected an understanding of creating food with minimal ingredients that could withstand time and harsh conditions, principles that evolved into modern ready-to-eat military rations. Medieval soldiers also demonstrated the importance of balance within the constraints of limited resources. While the rations were simple, they provided a mix of macronutrients, protein from salted meats, fats from rendered sources like pemmican, and carbohydrates from hardtack. This understanding of dietary needs underpinned their survival strategies and ensured readiness in battle. The ability to adapt and innovate in the face of scarcity highlights the resilience and ingenuity of medieval armies. These practices not only sustained soldiers physically, but also contributed to the broader field of food science, influencing modern techniques and approaches to storage, portability, and nutrition. By studying their methods, we gain insight into how necessity drove the development of creative solutions that continue to impact how food is preserved and consumed in challenging environments today.